Hey everybody, welcome to the Book of Joe, my variety channel. Today we're going to be doing a new episode in a new segment that I'm calling Life. Not a fancy name, still working on it, but this segment is where I'm going to be taking a little bit more time to talk about some more personal stuff. The good, the bad, and the not so pretty. And today I really want to talk about my precious Rylee. I know that every baby that's born is precious, and my baby's no more precious than your baby's, but for my wife and I, Rylee really is something of a miracle. Now, you see, Rylee is our rainbow baby. And for those of you who don't know, a rainbow baby is the baby that's born after you lose a baby. And the reason I've chosen now to talk about it is because Saturday is the birthday to JD and I's twins that we lost 3 years ago. And so even though I'm over the moon excited and I'm just blown out of the water with happiness with Rylee, and she's truly stolen my heart, I felt like I still want to honor the twins that we lost and kind of tell our story of how we got here. Now, I'm not going to get too much into mine and JD's story with the comas and the dialysis and the kidney transplants and all the challenges we had, but I just got to leave that out there as a little bit of a foundation and backstory, is that, it was really difficult for my wife and I to get pregnant. We're going to kind of talk about that. And my wife has some health issues. So my wife and I have been married for almost going on 7 years this year. And so about 5 years ago, my wife and I decided, hey, let's have a baby. And so normally when you decide you're going to have a baby, you just go start practicing or start having, But for my wife and I, first we had to go talk to a doctor. So we sat down with my wife's nephrologist, which is her kidney doctor, and wanted to confirm, can we have a baby? Is it safe for us to have a baby? Is it safe for the baby if we try to have a baby? And what are our risks? The nephrologist cleared us and said, you absolutely can have a baby. There's some things we have to do with your medicine, and certainly getting pregnant, you will be considered high risk just because of the kidney transplant and the medicines and the challenges. Not to mention our age. We are a little bit older than you would like, and my wife's a few years older than I am even, so there's a lot of risk. So they basically told us, getting pregnant, you're going to be at a much higher risk at preeclampsia, a much higher risk at stillbirth, preterm labor, and miscarriage. There's a lot of things that could happen that they laid out for us. So my wife and I did what most couples do. We stopped using protection and started trying to have a baby. And with that we did that for a year, and without any luck, we then decided to move to the next step, which is, starting to track your cycles, marking on the calendar, doing ovulation tests, and trying to maximize our efforts so that we could try to get pregnant. And again, it was like another year went by of doing that. And so we were 2 years into this process. And around the end of 2014, going into 2015, my wife and I had pretty much decided we needed to see a specialist. And so our plan was, at the beginning of 2015, we were going to go see a specialist and find out, could we get pregnant? Why aren't we getting pregnant? And what is happening? But lo and behold, my wife, about the third week of January, comes to me and is basically saying her breasts are tender, she's got nausea, she's getting kind of fatigued, and she's burping a lot. And so, of course, those were all symptoms of pregnancy. And actually, I could tell she was kind of glowing. So we took a pregnancy test. And for the first time, after many pregnancy tests, she was pregnant. And we were over the moon. I mean, this was so exciting. We're going to have our baby. We were super excited. And it was an amazing time. I mean, it was just like we were so thrilled for the opportunity to potentially be having this baby. And so I had to go away for training, and my wife went to the first ultrasound, and she texted me and she said, call me when you can. And I said, okay, is everything good? She said, I got some good news and some bad news. It's very interesting. And I was like, uh-oh. I knew personally in my gut exactly what the problem, or not necessarily the problem was, but I knew exactly what she was about to tell me. And that was that she was pregnant with twins. And so super exciting. And so we're thinking, we're going to have both of our kids. We'll have them all done at once. And then we went to the maternal fetal specialist, which is like the high risk OB. And they brought us from cloud 9 down to reality. The risk that JD already had were extenuous. Now you are adding twins, which twins already typically come early. Twins are already really hard on your body. I mean, the doctor said, our goal would be to get you to 34 weeks, which would be basically a miracle. But we can do it, and you might have to be in bed rest for 6 to 8 weeks in the hospital as we monitor you. Not to expect this to be a really simple pregnancy. So my wife and I, we did everything we could we got started eating right. My wife took the vitamins, obviously we stopped drinking, all that good stuff. And so everything was going good. We had a lot of ultrasounds. We had just finished some genetic testing. We actually hadn't even told our parents. We pretty much told nobody that we were pregnant because we wanted to make sure that everything was going to be good. We really wanted to wait until we were getting into the second trimester to begin to talk about the pregnancy. Now, there was a couple family members that knew, my wife's mother and father. I mean, they knew because of various reasons, but basically nobody knew we were pregnant. And so we're heading into the 12th week, and pretty much everything had been going really great. I mean, the genetics results had come back. Everything looked great. In fact, it was like the perfect pregnancy at that point. The first trimester flew by with no problems until about the 12th week. And that's when my wife began to bleed. And so we went to the emergency room, and they diagnosed her with a subchorionic hemorrhage, which is basically blood clots that develop between the uterus and the womb, and that can cause the baby to detach from the womb and create a miscarriage. Now, not all miscarriage, not all what they call is SCH, not all subchorionic bleeds or hemorrhages create miscarriages, but all miscarriages typically have a subchorionic bleed involved. So we're diagnosed with subchorionic bleed. We're immediately put on bed rest, basically told you need to take it really easy. And so here we are, week 12. My wife's already on bed rest for the first time, which just now this seems like it's going to be a really long pregnancy. We saw our OB about a few days later, and he said, hey, everything looks good. The bleed's gone. It probably passed, which is the best thing that could happen. And so I think you guys are in the clear. It was the last day of the second trimester, and my wife began to bleed again. This time, though, she was accompanied by really bad cramps. So, of course, we went to the emergency room, and when they did the pelvic exam, they had identified that she was already 2 centimeters dilated, and that she was actually having contractions, and that her body had gone into labor. So we contacted our high-risk doctor who was going to come take a look. At the time, they said this guy's a miracle worker. In fact, apparently even one of the baby's feet had started to slip into the cervix, but he had been known to push body parts back up, sew up that cervix, and we would probably be okay. However, the cause of the labor was that my wife had actually gotten an infection, and we don't know much more than that even today. We just know that she had gotten an infection, and her uterus basically was flushing the infection, which meant including the babies. And at that point, it was clear about the morning of the 17th, or late that night, somewhere between late the 16th and early the 17th of March, that that this pregnancy wasn't going to happen. Additionally, they already had to start pumping JD full of medicine, which would have been really bad for the babies, even if they could have survived if we could have stopped the labor. And could have cured the infection. But in the end, there was really no choice. One of the babies had already passed. We were really hoping that there was a chance we'd be able to save one of the 2 babies, but the infection was just too much. And so early on March 17th, the very first day of the second trimester, my wife gave birth to the very first twin. Obviously, there's no viability at 13 weeks. And then it was, a few hours later, the second twin came, and the pregnancy had ended. And at the time, my wife and I were just shell-shocked. It just never felt like we could never really imagine having twins, and we could never really see the light at the end. We were so early in the pregnancy, but it just was such a dagger and such a hard moment. And it shook us. And at the time, my wife, right as happy, she's like, I don't want to do this again. That was just too much. It's too painful. And I agreed. I was like, you know what, if that's what we want to do, I can understand why. It was hard having to call family members and tell them that were pregnant, but we had just lost them. And so it was tough. Well, we were in the hospital basically 5 days during this period, and we were working with a grievance counselor who visited us, and they did so many great things. I mean, they gave us these, throw a couple of pictures here. They threw up these teddy bears to symbolize the twins. They put little feet print pins on it. I guess normally they would actually do handprints and feet prints of the baby, but they were so small, the baby's feet, that we really couldn't even do that. And the whole time I had pretty much said I didn't want to see the babies. I really didn't want to look at them, but the grievance counselor over time worked JD and I and got us to a point where we were okay with seeing the babies, and she brought them into the room in a nice basket and presented them very nicely, and we were able to kind of see them and get a little bit of closure. And that was, at the time, I really didn't want to, but in the end, I'm so glad I did. and we were able to get some closure on it. And I'll tell you, throughout the whole process, it was great. The only small regret I wish is I kind of wish we would have dealt with the burial ourselves and actually had them cremated and kept the ashes. It would have been like a thimble side of ashes, but it would have been nice to maybe do that and put them into some kind of jewelry or some kind of case that we could have kept. But the hospital, they offered, and we decided, they advised us probably not to go that direction. So we decided to go ahead and let them deal with it. And they, what they do is any of the babies that are lost that the hospital's responsible for, they cremate, and they spread the ashes in Superstition Mountains here in Arizona. And they told us it's at Jacob's Cross Trail, where to go. And they told, when they do it, a rabbi and a priest and a pastor and any other nomination, they typically have a bunch of them. They go out, they spread the ashes, and they pray, and they do a nice little ritual. So we still every year on Saturday we'll go up, but every year we go to where the babies are, where we think the babies are, ashes are spread, and we show our condolences. But it was a really tough time. So I mean, those 5 days, it was tough, but it was the months after that just, we weren't sure what we were going to do. And we had pretty much given up on the idea of having a baby. And, slowly as you heal from it and the wounds heal and you realize that, it's rough, it's not so great, it's challenging. Eventually, about 6 months later, we decided to start trying again. And right away, we got pregnant. And it was just like, oh my gosh, we're pregnant. This is so great. But this time, it was a blighted ovum. And a blighted ovum is basically you get the sac, you get the yolk sac for the baby. You begin to develop the womb and everything, but the embryo is not actually there. There's not enough chromosomes between the sperm and the egg to actually create a baby. And so that was another setback. That one didn't hurt nearly as bad as losing the twins. The twins was a painful, just because we had 12, really had 5 weeks, 4 to 5 weeks where we knew she was pregnant. We knew this could be something big and we could have this opportunity. It could be very special, and it just was taken away so quickly. Whereas the blighted ovum, it was the very first ultrasound. They knew something was wrong. We had to wait 5 days, got the second ultrasound. Clearly something was wrong. And so then they... All right, well, I guess I got to go now. Sorry, folks. I'm on baby duty. I told Mom when I got home today she could rest while I take care of the little one. So that is what is going on here. So she's probably going to steal all of your attention for the rest of this story. But this is why this is an okay story to tell, because I've got this amazing little thing here at the end of it. So it definitely wasn't as hard as losing the twins, but it hurt. It had its own place. The real challenge on that one is that we were ready to start again, and it set us back another 6 months. My wife had to do a D&C, and then to get rid of the placenta, and it just set us back. Say hi. Say hi. So that's when we finally decided to see a specialist, and we decided to do in vitro fertilization. Now, I have a whole story around in vitro fertilization that can go on and on and on, but I will save that one for another day. What I will tell you is that she was our last embryo. She was our last chance after we had already put quite a bit of cash into in vitro. And look, she's here. So it obviously worked out well in the end. But I wanted to share that story, and more so not for sympathy or for anything other than just if you're trying to have a baby, if you've had challenges having a baby, if you've had miscarriages, just know there is opportunities out there. There is a world out there where you can have hope, and there are things you can do. You don't always have to just go to in vitro. In vitro is very expensive, or can be very expensive. I know a friend who did in vitro who used a GoFundMe and paid for a large portion of it. But in vitro is something is an option. There's also IUI, and there's other ways to help make it happen. So if you're challenged out there and you've been trying to have a baby and you just haven't had any luck, I hope my story has lent just a little bit of hope for you. For 5 years, my wife and I have been trying to have this baby, and she really is our little miracle. And she is so precious and perfect in every way in our eyes. And we are so over the moon happy for her. But with our boys, which, when we were with our grievance counselor, like I mentioned, I didn't really want to see him, and eventually we did. We also didn't want to give them names, which we eventually did. Devon and Dillon, and we're going to visit them this Saturday. And up at Superstition. I might even take the camera and shoot a little bit of a, what we're doing in our little adventure, because it is a nice area. It's a fun area to hike. But in the end, it was a rough time. We had our backs were against the wall. We had lost hope. Okay. We'll finish this up. Any case, have hope. There is hope that one day you can have a little screaming monster like this right here. Stay positive. Keep your head up. Keep trying. That's the best part of having a baby, is trying. So keep going for it. And if you're still watching and you've enjoyed today's content, hit that subscribe button. Throw up those thumbs. And hey, tell me a little bit. If you want, leave a comment below. I'm more than happy to tell you more about in vitro or our experiences. Our doctor, our specialist was awesome. And maybe next time when I do another episode of Life, I will either go and talk a little bit more about my wife's challenges with her kidneys, or maybe I'll talk about the in vitro fertilization process, which, let me tell you, that alone it's crazy, the number of shots I had to give my wife, and just all the stuff that happens, and making this little baby in a dark, seedy room is its own story that I'll share another day. But I really appreciate everybody watching. I hope you're still there. Hit that subscribe button. Throw up those thumbs. For her. Do it for her. Subscribe for me. Say me. Okay, guys. That's enough of that. All right. I appreciate it. Hey, everybody. Cheers.